My funeral was of the highest standard after all. I was Zhao Xun's first wife, the model of the nation for 4 years, dutifully fulfilling my role without a single misstep. Even when he later doted on Consort Chen, creating a rift with the Empress Dowager, it was I who mediated between them. When Consort Chen fell ill, he stayed by her side for 3 days without changing clothes, not taking a single drop of water. When it was my turn, his face showed no sign of grief. He simply held my gradually cooling hand and sat for a long while. If there is a next life, I shall still grant you the position of Empress. I truly made it to the next life. At that time, Zhao Xun had not yet met the love of his life, and decided to let the Empress choose a virtuous noblewoman to be his princess. The Empress pointed at me. When he looked over, her fingertip shifted an inch, choosing another. Let's go with second Miss Li instead. The moment my eyes met Zhao Xun's, I hastily looked away. Seated above was the 18-year-old Prince Wei, Zhao Xun dressed in magnificent robes, his face like fine jade, yet his expression was one of detached indifference. He had reached the age for marriage discussions. Without a sweetheart, he left the arrangements to the Empress. In this life, the Empress had also come to ask me once. I politely declined, so the Empress sighed with a hint of regret, her fingertip pausing briefly before gently moving to the next name. Li Shuanghua, let's go with second Miss Lai instead. Li Shuanghua rose gladly and knelt to give thanks. Zhao Xun lifted his eyelids slightly, his cold gaze lingering on her for just a moment, just like how he used to look at me. No admiration, no dissatisfaction, just a passable expression accepting this decision. The Empress went through the motions, casually asking, "Does the Prince of Wei have any objections?" He paused for a moment. "Number, if it is not his beloved, Anyun would do." Walking out of the hall, a light drizzle pattered down. A pool of water on the ground reflected a hazy silhouette. I slightly raised the edge of my umbrella, locking eyes with my 15-year-old self in the reflection. And for a moment it felt like a lifetime ago. Zhao Xun's word was as good as gold. Since he had agreed to the marriage with her, it could not be changed. I would never again die of illness in the palace. I remember very clearly the day I died. People came in wave after wave. Court officials knelt outside the hall. Noblewomen knelt inside. Only Consort Chen didn't come. She was delicate and frail, afraid of catching the illness. Zhao Xun sat beside me, holding my slightly cold hand, his silk cuffs covering the back of my hand, all soft, my eyelids half closed. I struggled to recall what I needed to tell him. "If you wish to appoint a new empress, please choose noble Consort Li. She is calm and dignified, and surely won't make things difficult for Consort Chen." I still had my selfish motives. First, although I've competed with Li Shuanghua for many years, I admire her. Her lifelong wish was to stand above all others, and I was willing to elevate her to that high position. Second, deep down, I hated Consort Chen and Zhao Xun. She entered the palace as a commoner, and was made a consort without bearing any children. It caused an uproar throughout the court and beyond. Hundreds of officials remonstrated, and Father's secret letter even reached my hands. It was the end of the year. I was overwhelmed with the affairs of the 6 palaces, and I was also pregnant. Bound by duty, I had no choice but to go persuade Zhao Xun. Outside the hall, snow filled the sky. He only agreed to see me, and that was only out of consideration for the child in my womb. Inside the hall it was warm as spring, yet his expression was ice. Cold, lofty, and aloof, his eyelids slightly lowered, he only said 2 sentences to me. "Empress, even you have come to pressure me. You've lived in the inner palace for so long, you don't understand. It is rare for me to meet someone I am willing to entrust my true feelings to." I froze, clutching my sleeve tightly in utter embarrassment. True feelings. I actually had them too. When I married Zhao Xun, I had just turned 16. When the red veil was lifted and I met those calm, bright eyes, ripples gently spread through my heart. Later, I was Princess of Wei for 3 years, then Empress for 3 years. We treated each other with mutual respect, courteous as honored guests. I thought that between us, there was at least some affection. I was too stricken to notice I had tracked in remnants of snow when I came. Now the snow had melted, leaving a patch of wetness. When I took my leave, I slipped and fell outside the palace doors, and had no choice but to stay in bed to protect the pregnancy. This fall made Zhao Xun withdraw his decree for the first time. The young girl failed to be made a consort and couldn't hold back, cursing openly. The Empress. Ah. I had heard of her virtuous reputation before and wanted to pay my respects. Who would have thought, to stop me from becoming a consort, she would even use her own legitimate child? Such tactics are truly despicable. She should never have poked at my sore spot. Dragging my sick body, I summoned her and had someone slap her mouth 20 times. With her face red and swollen, she ran out crying. When Zhao Xun found out, he was furious. To back her up, he decreed her the title of Noble Consort Chen, so I could no longer easily touch her. The noble consort and I became enemies from then on. But I didn't intend to make things difficult for her. She was the one who spoke out of line first. If I didn't punish her, it would be hard to maintain authority later. I explained this to Zhao Xun after listening. He just smiled casually, with a hint of mockery in it. If you wanted to establish authority, you could have just publicly announced that punishment had been administered. Why actually hit her? My heart suddenly shrank. I suddenly realized the person before me wasn't just the emperor. He could also be someone else's support, and he could make things difficult for me, for someone else's sake. I was consumed with worry, often thinking of those empresses who lost favor and were deposed. Zhao Xun was no puppet. He was the supreme ruler, with power over life and death. I had made things difficult for Consort Chen, and he gave me a warning. If one day I stood in her way, I dared not imagine what would become of me. I developed a sickness of the heart, sinking deeper into despair day by day. When I was 7 months pregnant, Consort Chen provoked me once more. She held her beloved dog in her arms and said out of nowhere, "Your Majesty, the same trick can only be used once." I furrowed my brow and had someone take her away, refusing to see her. But it was already too late. The dog suddenly went mad, barking wildly as it lunged at me. Samone shielded me, but I was still frightened and fell to the ground. By the time Zhao Xun arrived, noble Consort Li had already had her taken away under guard. Consort Chen was weeping like a pear blossom bathed in rain, her pale wrist bruised purple from being gripped. She sobbed. I don't know what happened either. The Empress fell backward the moment she saw me, and then had my dog beaten to death. Zhao Xun helped her up and came to me with a face full of anger, thinking I had used the child to frame her again. When he arrived, he only saw palace maids carrying out basin after basin of bloody water. I had gone into premature labor. The child lived only half a day, without even being given a name. I was unconscious for 3 days. Zhao Xun stayed by my side for 2 days. In that moment near death, I heard him whispering close to my ear. It was my fault. I misjudged her. As long as you wake up, she'll be yours to deal with however you want. I managed to pull through after all. After waking, I dismissed the attendants and went to find Consort Chen with a knife in hand. The April weather was no longer cold. Yet I was still so cold that my whole body trembled, trembling so much I couldn't even grip the knife handle. The guards didn't dare stop me. Consort Chen fell to the ground. Her headdress had fallen off, her face filled with terror. Just a few stabs, I thought, and she could pay with her life for my child. In the end, the blade never came down. An arrow came piercing through the air from afar, going straight through my hand. The bow was in Zhao Xun's hands. Seeing him, Consort Chen stood up and kicked me in the knee. She threw herself into his arms, carrying the grievance of having narrowly escaped death. Zhao Xun pushed her away and picked me up. Yinju, I know you are in pain, but her crimes don't warrant death. I had no strength left. Like a rootless duckweed, I floated lightly into his arms. Tears flowed down my cheeks like a river bursting its dam. Consort Chen was put under house arrest, forbidden to leave without imperial decree. It was Zhao Xun who was protecting her. Even my arsenic couldn't be delivered to her. I knew I wouldn't live much longer, so I arranged my final affairs. What needed to be said had long been said. For Zhao Xun, there was only one sentence: instate Consort Li as the new empress. After hearing this, he agreed, using his fingertips to gently brush aside the hair clinging to my cheek, a flash of bewilderment and heartache passing through his eyes. He looked at me quietly, only speaking after a long while. What about me? Is there not a single word left for me? His voice was actually somewhat hoarse. What did I have to say to him? He possessed the 4 seas, with his beloved by his side. I wanted to say I hated him, but I couldn't. I was about to die, and the living would have to continue serving him as their sovereign. I curved my lips slightly, my face pale, and said softly, "Then I wish your Majesty prosperity for the nation, 10,000 years without worry." My hand was suddenly gripped tightly. Zhao Xun lowered his head, pressing his forehead against mine, his movements trembling slightly. "If there is a next life, I will still grant you the position of empress." A scalding tear fell onto the center of my brow. My thoughts were already becoming hazy. I thought drowsily, if there really is a next life, I don't want to be his empress anymore. I died in his arms. He held my ice-cold hand, yet could never warm it. The rain that day was just like now, drifting and swaying, wetting my cheeks. I wiped the water from my face and sighed softly. The empress was to send a Momo by her side to escort me out of the palace. I waited for a long time, but no one came, so I turned back to look. The palace doors were tightly shut. Under the eaves stood a person, holding an unopened umbrella, gazing at me through the bead. Curtain, like rain. It was Zhao Xun. He remembered that before the bestowed marriage, the empress had already tried to match us together. I had pursued him for a while, riding horses and hunting with him, drinking wine by the winding stream. His attitude toward me had always been lukewarm. Until after the bestowed marriage. Only then did he smile at me, seemingly helpless, seemingly resigned. Spending a lifetime with you doesn't seem so bad. I stepped back imperceptibly, lowered my brows, and curtsied slightly. "Greetings, Your Highness." He walked down step by step, through the mist. His eyes and brows seemed damp as well, inexplicably tinged with a touch of loneliness. "Why isn't it you?" he asked me. Probably just pure puzzlement. Clearly, between me and Li Shuanghua, the Empress favored me more. And I was also interested in him. I froze for a moment. Everyone around had been dismissed. Unable to wait for my answer, he lowered his head and looked at me. The young Zhao Xun had always been a man of few words, indifferent to others. He seemed to find it hard to speak, and hesitantly asked again, "Why isn't it you? Clearly, the Empress Mother chose you at first." I couldn't answer easily. I couldn't say how he had mistreated me in my past life, leaving my heart aching to the core. Nor could I say that my hatred in this life hadn't faded. I not only didn't want to marry him, I wanted him dead. I pressed my lips together. "Because Your Highness does not favor this humble daughter. To spend the rest of one's life facing someone who doesn't love you would be far too dull and painful." These words, he had said them too. He said Consort Chen was special, the love of his heart, so I retreated step by step to maintain peace on the surface. I even personally went to persuade the Empress Dowager. I didn't make him spend the rest of his life looking at me with disgust either. I died early. So early that my mother's hair at the temples hadn't even turned white. Yet she had to come to the palace gates to see off my coffin. The history books meticulously recorded my virtue and harshly criticized Consort Chen. But thinking about it, a virtuous reputation is useless. Wealth and power also vanish like smoke after death. All that remains is grief for loved ones and joy for enemies. I want to live well this time. Zhao Xun fell silent for a moment. His hand gripping the umbrella handle tightened, his knuckles turning slightly white. Then what if this prince says? Large raindrops fell, hitting the edge of the umbrella. Your Highness, I softly interrupted him. The rain is getting heavier. If this humble lady doesn't leave now, the road will become difficult to travel. The palace doors behind him opened, and a nanny came out at just the right moment, holding an umbrella, smiling as she approached. Your Highness, the Empress and second Miss Li are both waiting for you inside. She then turned to look at me, and seeing that I already had an umbrella, handed me a handkerchief instead, telling me to mind the rainwater on my clothes. I thanked her and took it. Zhao Xun's words had been interrupted, and he didn't continue. His gaze lingered on me briefly before he withdrew it, then stepped into the palace. The palace doors closed slightly, and the sounds of the Empress and Li Shuanghua chatting and laughing drifted out. They seemed to mention Zhao Xun as well. He chuckled softly and responded with a couple of words. The nanny led me out of the palace. The palace path was very long. Only nobles of high rank could ride in palanquins. After walking for a while, my shoes and socks got splashed wet, and I inevitably looked somewhat disheveled. The nanny helped me onto the carriage, suddenly sighed, and said meaningfully, Miss, you are so foolish. His Highness the Prince of Wei was moved by you, miss. This servant saw it all clearly. Was he moved? It was just that I had suddenly changed, and he wasn't used to it. But I knew the nanny meant well. Who didn't know that the Empress had no children of her own? Yet she particularly favored the Prince of Wei and the Prince of Qi. The Crown Prince had not yet been appointed, and the Prince of Wei was older, so his odds were better. I lifted the carriage curtain with my fingertips and smiled gently at her. My intentions do not lie here. I returned to the mansion early. No one needed to ask. They already understood in their hearts. How could they not have chosen me? My grandfather held the highest position among officials. My father was His Majesty's trusted confidant, and I was impeccable in both talent and beauty. How could I have been passed over for Li Shuanghua? Mother held my hand and spoke with great hesitation, telling me not to be sad. There are so many fine men in the world. Marrying into a noble family would be good too. I shook my head and said I had declined on my own. I said softly, I don't want to marry a prince or marquis. I only need someone with good character. If there isn't one, not marrying is fine too. Mother was shocked. She never expected that the illustrious PI family, with its bells and cauldrons, would raise a daughter with such a temperament. She didn't know. I had been an empress, recorded in the history books, yet I hadn't lived well at all, but I think she would understand. After my death, Mother wept uncontrollably and rallied the noble ladies to demand the execution of Consort Chen. Father removed his official cap and knelt so long he couldn't rise, demanding an explanation from Zhao Xun. He had clearly left a letter, telling them to protect themselves wisely and not to worry about me. Thinking of this, I lowered my head, my throat suddenly choking up, seeing my reddened eyes. She became anxious too, patting the back of my hand as her tone softened. All right. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. In the blink of an eye, 5 days passed. For some reason, the imperial edict bestowing marriage upon the Prince of Wei was long delayed from the palace, and various family schemes became active again. The next time I saw Zhao Xun was on the flower festival. It was the height of spring, with hundreds of flowers blooming in competition, the best time for outings. It was a sunny day, the sunlight falling warm and gentle, letting me briefly forget the damp coldness of Cunning Palace from before. I sat by the flower bushes with the ladies of various families, cutting ribbons and colorful strips to tie onto the flowering branches. Li Shuanghua suggested writing something on paper. Not far away, literati gathered elegantly, drinking wine and composing poetry. Third Miss Liu kept glancing over there. Her cheeks flushed red. Everyone knew her fiancé was there, so they teased her to go borrow brush and ink. She came back with them, a servant following behind her. I recognized that servant. He was the one who often attended Zhao Xun. The servant held a rosewood tray, his posture respectful, his smile ingratiating. On the tray were brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. "This is a gift from His Highness to Second Miss P." Such special honor made everyone cast sidelong glances, but I froze in place, feeling the tray was too hot to handle. Accepting it felt wrong. Refusing it also felt wrong. This never happened in my previous life. Around me, faint laughter could be heard. No wonder His Highness the Prince of Wei has been delaying his decision. Turns out he is not satisfied with second Miss Li. Li Shuanghua stood up, coldly looking at everyone. The surroundings fell silent, and she stormed off with a sweep of her sleeves. I took the tray, set it down gently, and left a remark. "Lear has caught the Empress's favor and often attends her. How could the likes of you and me compare?" She walked too fast, and I had to jog to catch up. I didn't know how to comfort her, so I just kept chattering in her ear, telling her she was already good enough and didn't need to listen to what others said. In my past life, when I was weighed down by sorrow, she was the one who comforted me. But everyone has their own struggles, and it is hard to truly empathize. She couldn't ease my heart, and I couldn't ease hers. We walked for a while, then she let out a heavy sigh and pulled me back. "Forget it. If I hide away, it'll only make it look like they hit a nerve." I cut some colored paper. She wrote some words, and we made wishes to the flower goddess. I wrote one too. I borrowed her brush and ink. As noon approached, the crowd dispersed. Zhao Xun walked this way, drawing near the blazing flower trees. He was tall and spotted my colored paper at a glance. He tilted his head slightly and read it aloud in a soft voice. "In gardens once enjoyed, glad there is no wind or rain, spring birds herald peace." He suddenly froze. "Is this your only wish?" I didn't look at him. Yes. This wish alone was already hard to come by. In my unbearable past life, all that fell upon me were bitter winds and cold rains. It was the same before I died. It was clearly a fine season of gentle spring rains, yet I feared the cold, feared the damp, and my unhealed wounds ached terribly. Every night, I lay with bloodshot eyes wide open, listening to the rain striking the banana leaves, thinking about my own funeral arrangements. I clearly did nothing wrong, yet I still ended up in such a state. The same scene, with Zhao Xun added, would become a terrible memory. Zhao Xun casually picked up a colored ribbon nearby and gave it a cursory glance. "Marriage, wealth, beauty. You don't pray for any of them." I didn't answer him. The wind blew through the treetops, and the colored ribbons and streamers swayed together, spring light rippling. I brushed away the streamer that had stuck to my forehead. His breathing grew slightly unsteady. Then, feeling awkward, he looked away. The tray was placed elsewhere, the things he had sent arranged neatly, with no sign of having been touched. Zhao Xun's gaze darkened slightly. He seemed to finally understand that I couldn't avoid him fast enough. I had more pressing matters to attend to. After the flower festival, the matter I had been investigating for so long finally yielded news. I found the former imperial consort Chen in a ruined temple on the city outskirts. In the dead of night, I wore a veiled hat, teeth clenched tight, the taste of blood filling my mouth. My maidservant Xu Yun tied up the unconscious girl before us. She said, "The household registry and name have all been verified one by one. This is the person Miss is looking for." She didn't ask why I bore such a grudge against someone I'd never met, why I had to see them dead. She only knew I hated them with all my being, and if I didn't get this done, I'd have no peace day or night. A sharp dagger was placed into my hand. I looked at the familiar face before me, not daring to think too much, not daring to hesitate, and plunged the blade into her heart. Blood splattered onto my cheeks, scalding hot. I slumped to the ground in a daze, covering my face with a handkerchief. The broken Buddha statue stood solemnly, as if taking everything into its eyes. There was wind in the night. Fallen petals scattered, turning into spring mud. I thought of that child who only came to this world for a fleeting glimpse. She had no name. Consort Chen said her early death was inauspicious, so she wasn't buried in the imperial mausoleum. Like fallen petals, she departed with spring. I was unconscious at the time, never saw her. Naturally, never saw her one last time either. I gripped the broken incense burner beside me, my nails digging in as if to pierce it. My heart ached like it was being squeezed by a fist, breathing labored, sobs suppressed, broken and intermittent. Shuyun froze, then gently patted my back a few times. I kept watch from night until dawn, confirming my nemesis from a past life had no pulse, her body stiff. The first thing was done. Shuyun disposed of the body for me as I wearily walked out of the ruined temple. Sunlight broke through the thick fog, slanting down. I could see clearly now, too. A person stood in the mist. The newcomer was slender and tall, like a pine or cypress, plainly dressed, so he wasn't conspicuous. I recognized him, but at this moment, he didn't recognize me, and he had just caught me killing someone. In my past life, Zhao Xun often mentioned someone to me. The Tanhua of that year's palace examination, Lu Weiyun. Zhao Xun admired his talent and intended to win him over. As the princess consort of Wei, I followed Zhao Xun and met him once. His official robe was crimson, pure yet striking, but his demeanor was cold as the snow on Mount Gai, making people dare not look directly at him. Zhao Xun summoned him. He used official duties as an excuse, coldly declined, which displeased Zhao Xun. The second time, when the Yellow River flooded, he went with Zhao Xun to provide disaster relief. Zhao Xun went to win the people's hearts. I sold my jewelry, wore plain clothes without hairpins or ornaments, and stood by the roadside distributing porridge. The clouds cleared and the rain stopped. The sun was fierce. Seeing the people suffering, my heart hung suspended, couldn't go up, couldn't come down, and I just stood outside in the sun for the whole day. In the evening, Zhao Xun saw I looked haggard, held me with heartache, and told me I didn't have to be so serious about it. I still went in the following. Lu Weiyun was there too. No one expected that the official from the capital, pure as jade, with an appearance fit for sitting dignified in high halls, was treading in the mud, personally setting up water gauges and building dikes to control the flood, completely unconcerned about the dirt on his clothes. I, too, admired him, and watched him for a long time. He seemed burned by my gaze, his back stiff, not daring to turn around. Later, Zhao Xun tried to win him over again, only to learn he had already sided with Prince Qi. Prince Qi was benevolent, yet he was Zhao Xun's greatest political rival. In the end, Prince Qi was defeated in battle and killed. Zhao Xun ascended the throne, and Lu Weiyun became a prisoner. I went to the imperial prison to persuade him on Zhao Xun's behalf. Zhao Xun cherished talent. If he was willing to abandon his former lord and follow Zhao Xun, it would make for a fine tale. High office and generous salary went without saying. The imperial prison was damp and cold. I wore a cloak. He was thinly dressed, sitting in a corner, disheveled hair covering his brows and eyes. His complexion pale, completely devoid of his former grace. He raised his head, his expression cold and composed, as if already prepared to die. Our eyes met. I wanted to speak but stopped myself. In the end, I couldn't say the words meant to persuade him. I only called someone in to clean up the place and bring him more clothes. I persuaded Zhao Xun to spare his life and banish him from the capital. Not killing a scholar of integrity would also show the emperor's magnanimity. Zhao Xun agreed and exiled Lu Weiyan 1,000 li away. After that one meeting in the imperial prison. Until I died, we never met again. The newcomer slowly approached. Only then did I notice he carried a bookcase on his back. Travel worn his eyelashes and brow tips, as if touched by mist, making his eyes seem somewhat moist. His features were unlike in his past life, now soft and youthful. I knew Lu Weiyan came from a humble background. I didn't expect that the rundown temple, the scholar rushing to the exams. Everything was just like in the storybooks. In storybooks, the young lady would give the poor scholar silver, then offer herself to him. What about me, perhaps? I would also give him some money, but only to shut him up and forbid him from mentioning today's incident. My palms were all sweaty. Steadying my veiled hat, I extended one hand. Lu Weiyan spoke. I've already checked. There is no one nearby. This matter, I won't speak of it either. His voice was like a gust of wind, passing through the woods, shaking off dewdrops. I froze, uncertain and suspicious. I believed him. Once he said something, he wouldn't go back on it. But really, I had no choice but to believe him. Consort Chen as a commoner was easy to deal with. But Lu Weiyan already had scholarly titles at this point. I couldn't kill him too and stir up even bigger trouble. So I withdrew my hand and said softly, "Thank you." The white gauze of the veiled hat was like thick fog. I couldn't see his expression clearly. He seemed to have smiled briefly. This matter then became like a falling petal, flying away without a trace. Apart from the three of us, no one knew. The spring examinations in the 3rd month, Mother was fretting over my unsettled marriage, repeatedly joking that Father should catch me a husband from under the examination rankings. The Empress was also burning with anxiety. She selected another batch of women. But this time, Zhao Xun had demands. He found no one good enough, everyone lacking something. I heard he dreamed of a girl. She was born into a noble family, kind, hearted and gentle, spoke softly, and always treated servants with courtesy. They would advance and retreat together, treat each other with respect, and live in perfect harmony. In the dream, spring rain fell soft as silk, and willow branches stretched endlessly. No matter how he tried, he couldn't see her face clearly, and woke feeling a sense of loss. There are plenty of gentle and virtuous noble ladies, but who could guarantee that the one chosen would weather storms with him, never leaving his side for the rest of their lives? Mother looked at me with worry, stroking the hair by my temples. Born into a noble family, kind-hearted and gentle, I always feel the King of Wei still has you on his mind. This wasn't a good thing. I shook my head, hiding my blood-stained hands in my sleeves. They were ice, cold, impossible to warm up no matter what. How am I kind-hearted? I just killed someone. In the future, I would kill another. The day the results were announced, I was in a tea house, arm in arm with Li Shuanghua, watching the top scholar parade through the streets. She begged me to come watch, just to feast our eyes. I heard this year's top scholar is even more handsome than the 3rd-place candidate. I drifted off slightly. Before becoming a princess consort, I paid no attention to political affairs. With so many years past, without any involvement, I couldn't even remember who the top 3 candidates were. Spring breeze caressed my face. Apricot blossoms drifted down. I combed my hair by my temples with my fingers, and when I looked down, I suddenly froze. Lu Weiyan rode a white horse, a palace flower tucked in his hat. Even at such a triumphant moment, his expression remained calm, without any restlessness. Apricot blossoms covered his shoulders. The one that had just been resting by my temple spiraled down with my movement. He suddenly looked up and caught it in his palm. As if sensing something, our eyes met. It felt like many years had passed, not knowing what night this was. It wasn't until Shu Yun came up to call me, saying Father wanted to see me, that I hurriedly lifted my skirt hem and went downstairs. This year, father was in charge of the palace examination, having the advantage of proximity. Yet he still fought for a long time, nearly coming to blows with the other officials, before finally securing the proper and reserved Zhuangyuan. Father boasted of his achievement to me. He said this Zhuangyuan wasn't good with words, and didn't dare speak to me, but with his encouragement, he was going to come propose to me in person. I was stunned. It was true he wasn't good with words. He only seemed to speak with eloquence when writing memorials. Didn't dare speak to me. Thinking back, everyone always said Lord Liu had a handsome appearance, but an upright and unyielding temperament. Yet he alone didn't dare face me, always hastily averting his gaze each time, as if seeing a flood or fierce beast. The Chuanglin banquet had not yet begun. Lu Weiyan had already dismounted and stood to the side, his posture tall and straight, his bearing refined and elegant. His fingertips seemed to tremble badly, the apricot blossom in his hand quivering slightly. He lowered his thin eyelids, his earlobes as red as palace flowers, speaking with unease. I, Lu, am humble and lowly, with only my sincere heart and my life to offer before the second Miss Pi. I wonder how much courage those words took. I know he is a man of fine character. I have seen him petitioning on behalf of the people, seen him speak bluntly at the risk of offending the emperor. It seems every side of him is good. I gently rubbed the hem of my dress. Marriage was likely inescapable. If it were him, it seemed quite good. I raised my eyes and smiled softly. All right. Father laughed, giving his colleague a nudge. Off you go, off you go. The top scholar is going to be my Pi family's son. In-law now. No need to wait any longer. The sound of hooves arose. In an instant, the surroundings suddenly fell cold and silent. Everyone turned to pay respects to the Prince of Wei. I, too, bowed along with them. Yet, I saw him dismount and walk straight toward me, his shadow on the ground enveloping me, like dark clouds pressing down. He asked me coldly, Pei Yinju, what did you promise him? The Prince of Wei was supposed to be attending the banquet today, yet now he stood here, blocking everyone's path, his face full of anger, as if a storm was about to break. I was not afraid of him. With all the senior ministers present, and His Majesty himself here, under everyone's watchful eyes, what could he possibly do? I raised my head and answered properly. I agreed to the marriage with the top scholar. A very ordinary sentence. Yet, it was like a stone cast into water, stirring endless ripples in his eyes. He was as if struck by lightning, his entire body frozen stiff, panic and confusion intertwined in the depths of his eyes. Lu Weiyan's gaze fell upon him, frost seeming to gather between his brows. I lowered my head. The banquet was about to begin, and I couldn't enter anyway, so I bid farewell to everyone and left first. The Chuanglin banquet was quite lively. I heard from my father that the Zhuangyuan was young and promising. His Majesty was greatly pleased and bestowed marriage upon Lu Weiyan and me at the banquet. The Prince of Wei seemed absent-minded. For some reason, he accidentally shattered a wine cup. My marriage with Lu Weiyan was settled. He sent many things over. Sometimes an item bestowed by the emperor, sometimes paintings and calligraphy he'd traded for with others. Before even entering the Hanlin Academy, His Majesty directly granted him an official position, and he had a salary. The betrothal gifts piled up more and more. Looking at the gift list, I often felt astonished. In my previous life, he had always been alone. Zhao Xun once teased me about it. A person like Lu Weiyan, if he got married, who knows what it would be like? His heart held only government affairs. Being his wife would probably be lonely and desolate. Now I know. He doesn't have much family wealth, but he would give everything he has, offering up his whole heart. When he had a day off, Lu Weiyan and I went on an outing together. A small bridge over flowing water, fallen petals drifting. He held the oar, rowing the small boat. I looked down at him and only then noticed that his hand holding the pen was very broad, with distinct knuckles. No wonder he had carried bricks and drawn a bow in his past life. Lu Weiyan felt a bit uneasy under my gaze, and the boat veered off course, drifting toward the shore. He leaned forward slightly, the wind blew through my veiled hat, and the white gauze brushed against the side of his face. His eyelashes trembled slightly. He suddenly turned his head away, raised his hand to straighten the white gauze. His face flushed red, not daring to look again. Yinju. It was the first time I heard him call me that. In my past life, when he came to the capital, I was already the future princess consort. Later, I became the empress. When the palace servants delivered the decree to the imperial prison, saying the empress had pardoned him, his dim eyes regained a bit of light. He accepted the decree with gratitude, yet he had never addressed me directly. He said, "Actually, I was outside the temple the whole time that day." He was the top talent of Jiangnan, and people had already placed their bets on him, giving him travel money. He didn't need to stay in a rundown temple. He was just passing through while traveling and happened to witness me killing someone. Lord Lu was an upright man, but that one time, his only reaction was to stand guard outside and cover it up for me. Outside the temple, the wind wailed. I was crying, and he was sighing. He said, "The debt hasn't been fully collected yet, has it?" I felt aggrieved again, clutching the white gauze tightly, and said in a muffled voice, "Yes." There was no need to say it explicitly. He had also experienced rebirth. He said he didn't dare come to propose, knowing he wasn't worthy. But having seen the previous life, he knew that even the most noble ruler of the realm couldn't make me happy, wasn't fit for me. After one rebirth, he became the top scholar and gained my father's appreciation. Only then did he dare to speak up. He lowered his head, his shadow swaying on the lake surface, the rippling light glittering. "I seek Yinju's favor." The boat drifted and swayed, wandering for half a shikan, finally reaching the shore. I placed my hand in Lu Weiyan's palm, lifting my skirt hem as I stepped off the boat. I happened to encounter the Prince of Wei's procession. He had been waiting here all along, staring at our clasped hands. His expression dark and sinister. Zhao Xun said he remembered everything. He remembered how I had accompanied him. Not just accumulating prestige step by step, but on the day of the palace coup, I was also by his side, sharing life and death together. He approached step by step. "Yinju, why are you standing by someone else's side?" His hair wasn't properly combed today, and he had come galloping on horseback, all disheveled, making him appear even more sinister, no longer having his former noble elegance. He said to Lu Weiyan, "Had I known you harbored such intentions, this prince should have disregarded Yinju's wishes and had you cut into 1,000 pieces." The last few words were bitten out with extreme force, clearly filled with intense hatred. Lu Weiyan showed no sign of fear, gazing at him levelly with cold indifference. There was wind over the lake, the hair ribbon behind his head rustling and swaying, like a sword's shadow. "Your Highness. It is different from the past now. The victor becomes king, the loser a bandit, the outcome is yet unknown. Starting over, he was not the emperor, the ending undecided. If the Prince of Qi claimed the throne, the one who should be cut into 1,000 pieces would be Zhao Xun." Zhao Xun stared at me with reddened eyes, his face gradually turning deathly pale. "You think so too? That I might lose?" The visitors around were dispersed, none daring to cast another glance this way. He asked me, "Being my lawful wife, are you not content?" Lu Weiyan's expression turned cold instantly as he shielded me behind him. He was also tall, his presence no less imposing than Zhao Xun's. "Your Highness is confused. Does this matter even need asking? By the time of my death, I had been Zhao Xun's wife for 7 years. I dutifully kept my place, never once getting angry with him. He thought he treated me well. Throughout the 6 palaces, I held great power. Even when favored consorts climbed over my head, my position as empress was never shaken. Before I died, I wished him 10,000 years without worry. He also promised me the next life. He thought this was a weighty promise, that whenever we met, we would be entangled, and I would be his destined empress. But he clearly saw my suffering, yet self-righteously ignored it. Those words were all empty pretense. I gazed at him, watching fallen petals drift down behind him, the sky seeming to darken. I hate you, Zhao. I only wish to never see you again in this life. I only wanted to protect the people around me. The words I said to him held not a shred of sincerity. The expression on Zhao Xun's face cracked apart inch by inch. His complexion turned ashen, and he retreated several steps in disbelief, his figure swaying as if about to collapse, nearly unable to stand steady. I lifted my gaze toward Lu Weian, my eyes brimming with smiles. Where shall we go next? It seems to be the temple, to match our 8 characters. Lu Weian and I had our 8 characters matched and selected an auspicious date. There was nothing Zhao Xun could do about it. Only now did he understand how powerless I had been back then. Seemingly holding power, appearing infinitely glorious. Yet with a monarch above me, nothing could be accomplished without imperial approval. Zhao Xun knelt endlessly outside Zekan Hall. A bamboo scroll was thrown out, striking his forehead. Preposterous. Do you intend to steal a minister's wife? This matter need not be brought up again. If you continue acting this way, get back to your fief. These were very harsh words, meaning he would have no chance at the throne. On the day of my wedding, Zhao Xun did not come to the banquet. His Majesty also forbade Lu Weian from sending him an invitation. He got completely drunk at the largest tavern in the capital. After sobering up from this bout of drinking, he became clear-headed again. Yes, no matter what. To him, he himself was still the most important. He was dejected. But for me, it was my wedding night. In the past, Zhao Xun was polite to outsiders, only cold to his unsatisfactory lawful wife. Lu Weian was stern and unsmiling to outsiders. Yet when he saw me alone, all his air of bold remonstrance vanished, blushing after just a few words, and more often afraid I'd find him boring. I had drunk some wine, hooking my arms around his neck, and asked in a daze, "When did you fall for me?" Lu Weian said, at first sight. The candlelight was dim and yellow, making one feel dazed, blurring the boundary between past and present lives. I laughed at him proudly. Lord Lu has quite the nerve. His Adam's apple bobbed. He knew that such thoughts back then were called covetousness, and he gently gripped my wrist, leaning in close, his eyes bright as stars. This Lu can be even bolder. May I? After Zhao Xun sobered up, he devoted himself to state affairs again. With his memories of his past life, he should have achieved great things. Every matter had been meticulously planned, and if even one thing deviated, everything would fall apart. Our rebirth had inadvertently disrupted the arrangements of fate. The disasters of the past life did not arrive as expected. The cause of the floods changed, and the number of refugees was different too. Zhao Xun was full of confidence, yet was caught off guard, failing to become the savior. But the Prince of Qi succeeded. He was benevolent and cared about the people. I went to various places together with Lu Weian. As before, I distributed porridge and helped at the medical clinic. He rolled up his sleeves and went down into the fields, doing the hard labor no one else wanted to do. I thought back to when I first met him. I hadn't believed it either, that the Tanhua renowned for his looks was not only overly serious, but would also do this kind of thing. But this time, it was me standing with him in the murky water, not caring even if our hems got soaked. The commoners on the roadside praised our names, as if Pei Yinju and Lu Weian were naturally meant to be together. I spaced out for a moment, gradually understanding. This was what I wanted, to advance and retreat together. Lu Weiyan was promoted and once again donned the crimson official robes. He was the Prince of Qi's trusted confidant, calmer and cleverer than in the previous life, handling everything properly. Yet the palace had been unsettled lately. His Majesty had fallen gravely ill, earlier than in the previous life. And just like the previous life, he passed away suddenly, leaving behind neither an imperial edict nor a single word. The Prince of Qi had prepared early, and naturally so had Zhao Xun, who launched a palace coup. After half a day of fighting, Zhao Xun fled, though he was at a disadvantage. He had been emperor before and was more familiar with the palace layout, and the secret passages only an emperor would know. The Prince of Qi was very worried, afraid he hadn't pulled out the problem by its roots, and would let him make a comeback. I said, "I know where the Prince of Wei will flee to." The Prince of Qi glanced at me, quite surprised, then looked at Lu Weiyan. Lu Weiyan's expression didn't change. He said, "I'll have men protect you." I found Zhao Xun. After so long apart, he too had grown anxious and overthinking, his face haggard. His silver armor was stained with blood, as if he had reached the end of his road. The guards by his side were dead, but there were still people outside the palace waiting to help him. If he could save himself, there was still a chance. My eyes softened. "Zhao Xun, I can take you away." A simple sentence. The moonlight was just right, illuminating the tips of my hair and the hem of my skirt, just like when I stood by his side back then. I said, "I don't want you to die." He raised his eyes in dishevelment, yet there was a glimmer of tears in them, surprised and delighted, as if moved. This was how he used to give me hope, too. He said Consort Chen was mine to deal with as I pleased. But then he shot an arrow into my hand, cutting off my last chance to fight back. I wanted to cry yet also laugh, but in his eyes it seemed I still loved him, torn over him. After all, we had been husband and wife for 7 years. After all, he was confident he could make me devoted to him. Zhao Xun stood up. "I'll go with you. If I can fight my way back, the harem will be left empty. I only want you alone." I suppressed the mockery in my heart, lifted my skirt, and led him fleeing through the deserted path. But my stamina was no match for his, and I gradually fell behind him. I fingered the knife hidden in my sleeve, panting. "Zhao Xun, I can't run anymore." He turned back to pull me, only to see a blade pierce through his chest. I pulled out the knife and stabbed down again, expressionless. He stared with wide eyes in disbelief, his throat making gasping sounds. I smiled. "Do you feel it now, being betrayed?" He had no strength left to resist, yet still drew breath, so I rarely had the leisure to talk with him. "Your beloved consort Chen is dead. I killed her long ago. What a pity you didn't die at the right time, making it hard for you to reunite with her properly." He struggled to reach out his hand, as if trying to grab the hem of my clothes, his breath weak, his voice blurred, almost inaudible. He said, "Yinju. Actually, after you died, I had her put to death too, to make her pay with her life for yours. I didn't live until then, so I didn't know if his words were true or false. Nor could I ponder whether Consort Chen was his true love, or just a recently favored pet to him. I only remember, I was once so good to him, gave him everything. He treated me so badly, like an enemy. I coldly withdrew my gaze, and delivered another stab. The hidden guards lurking around all stood up. I was very cautious, didn't lure him here alone. Even if he discovered my impure intentions, it would be futile. It was merely the difference between dying by my hand and being shot to death by arrows. I gripped the blade and said clearly, "I have slain the traitor." Lu Weiyan strode over and embraced me fully. He wiped the cold sweat from my forehead and steadied my trembling body, bending down, pressing his forehead against mine. Letting out a soft sigh, he said, "Yinju." He said nothing else, just called out again and again, with such cherishing tenderness, from someone who was truly gentle and kind-hearted to now. I've been through too much already. This should be the first spring day I've encountered. The new emperor ascended the throne, granted amnesty to the world, and changed the tax to 1/30th spring breeze brings rain. Withered trees meet spring. For my merit in supporting the dragon, I was granted the title of Junju. Seeing that my mind had been weary for so long, the new emperor granted Lu Weiyan a month's leave, letting him accompany me on outings to relax. The pleasure boat sailed south along the river, naturally encountering wind and rain along the way. I only wore a straw raincoat, standing at the bow, letting the raindrops fall into my palms. He always watched my expression, afraid I might be moved by the scenery. I smiled freely. Not anymore. It is just watching the tide rise amid wind and rain across the river,